Tucker Carlson now sees everything through a lens of Jew hatred and through a lens of really an anti-Zionism that goes beyond just someone who feels annoyed because they think Israel gets special breaks and benefits from the United States that others don't get. That's one thing.
During a recent interview by the JCZC Podcast by Arise, Ambassador Mike Huckabee responded to Tucker Carlson after Tucker accused people like Huckabee and Ted Cruz of supporting the killing of innocent civilians. But Huckabee doesn't just disagree with Tucker politically. He says Tucker Carlson is becoming dangerous, accuses him of viewing the world through a lens of hatred toward Israel and Jews, and even says he's, quote, circling the drain. And honestly, regardless of where you stand politically, this conversation says a lot about the growing divide happening right now inside the conservative movement over Israel, Iran, and the future of the West. Watch this.
In a recent interview with the New York Times, Tucker Carlson had this to say about Senator Ted Cruz and about Ambassador Mike Huckabee, and I quote, "Ted Cruz is a sitting U.S. senator who has called for the killing of people who did nothing wrong, whole populations," and in reference to both Ambassador Mike Huckabee and Ted Cruz, supporting the murder of children and innocent civilians, waving away civilian deaths as if they don't matter. Here to respond to Tucker is U.S. Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee. Ambassador, welcome. What's your response to that?
Well, first of all, I'm just delighted you would have me on your show in light of the fact that I'm such a horrible person and advocate the murder of innocent children and civilians. So you're obviously pretty bold and daring to have someone of my nefarious background that even would be interviewed. My feeling about it, and I made this reaction on my X account, was that I really have become to feel genuinely sorry for Tucker Carlson. He's circling the drain. He's somehow unbalanced in a way, and I don't say that facetiously, and I don't say that to be critical. I'm saying it because out of a concern for a person who is exhibiting signs of having lost rational thought and any sense of perspective and being unable to determine the truth from a lie, and even saying things like, "I never said that," when in fact it's clearly on video with his face and his lips saying it. So I'm not mad at him. I don't hate him. I've known him for over 30 years, but I'm genuinely concerned for him. Obviously, I do not advocate for the murder of children or civilians. Ever have, never will. I'm as pro-life as anybody has ever been. I've been in the pro-life movement since the mid-'70s. So I think my bona fides on that are pretty clear. What's troubling is that Tucker Carlson now sees everything through a lens of Jew hatred and through a lens of really an anti-Zionism that goes beyond just someone who feels annoyed because they think Israel gets special breaks and benefits from the United States that others don't get. That's one thing. They're having a policy difference. But there is something deep inside of him that he recklessly is unable to see Israel as it really is. And he sees it as he wants to in his mind to justify the level of animosity and contempt that he has for the Jewish people as a whole, as well as for the state of Israel and its current government.
Yeah, and just to broaden out the context of this conversation, it was through the lens of a comparison being made between yourself, Ted Cruz, and Nick Fuentes, and an admitted white supremacist, clearly bigot, unfortunately young man whose voice is gaining traction here in the United States. And how vile that he would make this comparison and saying that he prefers someone like Nick Fuentes to people like yourself and Ted Cruz.
Ted and I have actually had a conversation about this since the New York Times story came out. I think neither of us are injured by it. We've both been through worse. We've been accused of crazy things. It's the nature of the beast if you're in the political realm. But in this case, if you're going to compare someone and try to denigrate their character, the best thing is to compare them to someone where there is a degree of believability. I'm not saying that people can't find fault in me, because if they can't, my wife will quickly help them out, and she'll give them a long list of things that they can find fault over. But to say that someone who believed that Winston Churchill was the real evil person of World War II and that Hitler really wasn't that bad, as Nick Fuentes has said, for him to say the things that he has about women, which is degrading and insulting and sexist in a way that is so very repulsive to anyone today, to make that comparison is what is bizarre. So it's like comparing maybe Bobby Flay, the great chef, to Jeffrey Dahmer. There's no credibility in that.
Sure.
And I think that's where Tucker is breaking down, even with his own audience. And I use the term, he's circling the drain.
See yourself as belonging to the MAGA movement, and if you do, how would you say that MAGA looks on this type of rhetoric? I mean, President Trump did kind of disassociate Tucker from MAGA, and I'd like to get your thoughts on that. And is it possible to be America first and also support Israel?
I think it's impossible not to be America first and support Israel, because being America first does not mean being America only. Doesn't mean we're an isolationist country that decides that we don't want to be a part of a larger view of the world in which our interests are being served, because quite frankly, there is no such thing as a nation that can fulfill all of its capabilities that does not have connection to the broader world. If we want to shut ourselves off from every other country on the planet, we lose a lot in terms of our own national security, our own military capacity. But then we lose some stuff that a lot of Americans never think about. I hear people say, I don't want anything to do with Israel. I say, okay, give up your cell phone. Give up car navigation. Give up some medical innovations that may have saved some member of your family's life. Be sure, by the way, to give up some conveniences like cherry tomatoes and seedless watermelons while you're at it. And let's just go ahead and don't buy anything that has an NVIDIA or an Intel chip. Let's get rid of most of your computers and a whole lot of the software that you use, because it was innovated here. And I'm sorry to break it to you, but if you hate Israel that much, you're going to be living a very different kind of life. Yeah. So I will say to your question, am I MAGA? I was MAGA before MAGA was MAGA. If people go back and look at what I was saying in 2008 when I was running for president, it was really MAGA without the acronym. And one of the reasons that I supported Donald Trump as soon as I got out of the race in 2016 was because it was a message that I could relate to. But the real architect of MAGA is Donald Trump. He gets to decide who's MAGA. And he's decided Tucker Carlson is not. So when Tucker Carlson went out and started pretending that he had a better understanding of what it means to be Make America Great Again and what America First means, more than the person who created it, invented it, and marketed it to 2 successful presidential campaigns, that's when you've crossed a line of credibility that Tucker has clearly crossed. It's like saying, I've eaten a Snickers bar, therefore I must have invented it. Tucker didn't invent MAGA. He didn't invent America First. He followed it for a while. And I will also say he followed it after he hated it. Then he loved it. Now he hates it again. And if he's out of the movement, it's because he never was really a part of it anyway. What's so outrageous about what Tucker's saying regarding Iran? I mentioned before, we don't know exactly the number, but probably no less than 40, but maybe up to 65,000 Iranian civilians have been murdered by their own government because they protested. But let's add more to that. There's a guy that I go to church with in Jerusalem. And by the way, it's okay to go to church in Jerusalem. You can go to church anywhere in Israel, and it's quite okay. You don't have to go and hide and go in secretly through a back door and not let anyone know. I play bass guitar at our church every Sunday. Churches abound. There's a growing Christian number in Israel, to the shock of many people. Christians are living very freely here. They don't live like that in Iran. And the young man that goes to church with me here in Jerusalem grew up Muslim in Iran. At the age of 18, he became a believer. And because he became a believer, he was beaten, he was jailed. He escaped the country. He first went to Canada, then to the U.S., became a U.S. citizen. Then he came to Israel. He's married. This is a lovely story. He married a Messianic Jewish girl from Jerusalem who is 100% Sabra Israeli, born in Israel. They have a beautiful child. So you can't get more disparate than an Israeli marrying an Iranian Christian. And, but it's okay. Nobody puts him in jail for this. Here's what I'm going with. His own family, he's only been able to speak to them a few times since the end of February when all of the difficulty started. Several of his relatives have been shot. They've survived, as far as he knows so far. Many of them have been jailed, all because they're Christians now. After he became a Christian, his brother, his mother, his sisters, many other members of his family have also become believers. I can assure you, they are not welcomed as believers and celebrated as such, and they have to truly hide their faith in a way that we're not used to seeing, and we certainly don't see it in Israel. Israel just is something that a lot of people have missed. There's a level of religious freedom that exists in Israel that most people are unaware of, and clearly Tucker Carlson is not aware of it. It's one of the most outrageous things that he has said, is that the Christian faith is oppressed here and people aren't able to be Christian. And that would be a real surprise to those of us who live here, go to church here, and feel absolutely free to worship here. And Tucker always likes to say, you know, I'm a Christian. I'm a Christian, of course. You're a Christian. I have a feeling. And he'll tell everybody that he's a Christian 100 times. And then he says that he thinks that the lifestyle of Qatar is more tolerant than it is in Israel. And I'm thinking, how many churches are there in Qatar? There are 6. They serve I would call them almost indentured servant population of Qatar, because the population itself is very small, but they brought in workers. They all live in a compound, very restricted. They are not allowed to ever exhibit a cross or do anything, say anything in public. There are 6 churches for about, I think, 300,000 total Christian. When I say Christians, people who identify as Christians, they come from other countries. They're in the service industry, but they live in these quarters that are, for all practical purposes, a ghetto made for the servants. They don't have freedom of worship. They don't have the freedom of expression. So for him to go talking about what a wonderful place it would be to live there, I'm thinking, yeah, Tucker, why don't you get up on the street corner and tell everybody what a Christian you are, wear a big cross around your neck, and just tell us where you would like your remains to be sent, because at some point this is not going to go over real well. It's part of the reason that I think it is important to talk about Tucker Carlson, not because I enjoy it, and not because I'm trying to injure his livelihood, but because he's dangerous. Here's the reason. What he says is dangerous in the same way that when people throughout history have been demagogues and they have incited entire populations of people to hate others, and they base it on hating people without justification, without cause, and based on outright lies. This is a dangerous thing. And when you marginalize, let's say Jewish people are marginalized, whether they're white people, whatever you marginalize, and you dehumanize them, you make it easy to justify not just hatred, but violence and murder toward them. Where do we get a society where people think it would be okay to kill a Charlie Kirk or a Donald Trump? When you dehumanize them to the point you say, their views are so dangerous, we can't tolerate them, we must get rid of them. That's why I say it's not enough to just ignore Tucker Carlson. We need to confront him, and we need to correct him, and we need to let people know that many of the things that he's saying are demonstrably untrue.
What makes this clip so important is that this is no longer just a disagreement over foreign policy. This is becoming a much deeper fight over truth, morality, anti-Semitism, and how people view Israel after October 7th. And whether you agree with Mike Huckabee completely or not, one thing is clear. The divide inside the conservative movement over Israel is getting bigger and louder. I also thought Huckabee made a very important point about Iran and religious freedom, because the same people constantly accusing Israel never talk about Christians being jailed, beaten, tortured, or killed inside Iran simply for converting from Islam. Meanwhile, Israel remains one of the only places in the Middle East where Jews, Christians, Muslims, and others openly worship freely. That contrast matters, but I want to hear from you. Do you think Tucker Carlson has genuinely changed over the years? Or do you think this is who he always was? Please comment below. If you have a 401k or an IRA, please listen. Gold is at record highs. What many people don't know is this. You can move part of your retirement money legally and without tax penalties into physical gold you actually own. Alpha Omega Gold helps you do this through a gold IRA. Your gold is real. It is stored safely. It is in your name. Learn more at ao.gold/stand. Alpha Omega Gold is our sponsor, and they proudly stand with Israel.